2 years ago, I packed my car, old Chevette, 84. Drove it till the engine smoked, hitched a ride through San Antone. Got a job, tending bar, let a senorita break my heart. I wanna sink my feet into some Illinois clay, walk along the cornfield in the cool of the day, get a dog and chase.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the CommonGround podcast. Excited to have a few of our own internal folks with us here today. We have, I've got Silas and Ezrah Berkson. Yes, they are brother and sister. Yes, they both grew up in Iowa, currently kind of living kind of scattered throughout the country, but originally Iowa, University of Iowa for both of them. Just really excited to have them on. They play a very intricate role in how CommonGround operates from a standpoint of customer service, customer satisfaction, kind of helping educate landowners and farmers both when it comes to how the process works through CommonGround of leasing, education, all that sort of stuff. So welcome both of you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Hey, Brad. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Brad. You bet. And I would believe that the vast majority of anybody who's had any sort of contact with CommonGround would have at some point in time spoke with either Silas or Ezrah, like without a doubt.
Yes, and likely both of us.
Probably. Yeah. So, Si, would you be able to talk me through like the process of, a lease is created, the bidding goes through, all the bidding is completed. Your role then after bidding is ended, and then we'll get to Ezrah does kind of the lead in part of this, but if we were to be finishing it up at auction, how would you describe to people kind of what you're doing in that process?
Yeah, of course. So when an auction finishes, we see that the bidding period is concluded. We're going to get in touch with that landowner right away. We're going to have been in touch with them already throughout this auction. They're getting notifications on what their properties, what bids are coming in and from who. But after that auction closes, we're going to call them. We're going to make sure they've seen, what their bidding closed at. And then what we really need to do is get them information on all of their bidders. Okay. So people not familiar with the site, high bid does not automatically win these auctions. So it's not like a lease is signed the second the auction ends. The landowner is actually going to have the opportunity to review every bidder on that auction and review information that's not just their bid number. So when I call them, I'm going to, make sure they've kept up with the bidding. And then I'm going to let them know that, hey, I'm going to shoot you an email. It's going to have all of your bidder profiles. So if they have a tillable lease up, we actually have a profile that farmers can complete, kind of letting the landowner know who they are as a farmer. And that's really important to the farmers. Sometimes when they call and they're like, hey, yeah, I'm putting in a bid, but I've never used anything like this. And like, I really want to be able to speak to the landowner and, speak to my qualifications as a farmer. And so our bidder profiles allows them to do that and allows the landowner to get just a much better picture of who each bidder is. So
like in a bidding process, everything's done. I get a call from Silas, make sure that I watch the bidding end, that I'm familiar with, where the final numbers came out at. So you're going to send me like, if I ask for the top 4 bidders, if it looks like, it's kind of neck and neck, there were a bunch of folks up there at the top of, or even in some cases, I suppose we've seen where a landowner might say, hey, like go down to the 5th bidder, although he was $50 less per acre. I would still like to be introduced to him or her and just make sure that they have a full, very, very good dynamic feeling of a direct conversation with these farmers. And then ultimately the landowner, I then comes back to Silas, right, and says, hey, after speaking with everybody, I decided to go with Farmer Greg, and Farmer Greg was the 3rd highest bidder. Can you get that going? So after I decide, Silas is the landowner, then how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned it, but I don't want to skip over it. Is when we send that information, we're going to send the contact information for each bidder. So the landowner can actually just ring them up, give them a call, get a sense of the guy, talk through anything specific, make sure we're all on the same page before we go accepting an offer and putting a lease together, only to have, something come up. So when they do say, "Hey, Silas, I want to go with Farmer Greg," we already are going to have a lease agreement that was viewable by the farmers when they're bidding and that the landowner reviewed. So it's going to kind of talk about the expectations of the lease, when those lease payments are going to be due. Are there any specific, additional agreements that the landowner has in there with the farmer? Maybe it's something about maintaining the field edges. But we're going to put that lease together and we're going to send it over to the landowner, just sort of as a final draft to send off. And then we're going to shoot that out to the farmer to review that, sign that. It gets signed by the landowner, and there you have a complete lease agreement.
Got it. And so, like, in the case as we see that through this sort of this open, transparent bidding process, where high bidders not necessarily always selected, we're seeing like great increase in popularity on the hunting lease side as well. Has become a substantially growing portion of our business, and it's pretty much the same. It's the same method, right? Side that like
Yeah, it's the same deal. We have sort of a separate hunter profile that we ask our hunters to fill out, just questions that are more relevant to hunting than farming, but the exact same deal. The farmer does not have to just take high bid from some guy out of state that they've never met. They're going to have a chance to see who this guy is, give him a call, get comfortable, and the same process from there.
So like your advice to active bidders, if you've been bidding on a property, be it a tillable farm, a hunting lease, any of those sort of, like, within 48 hours of that being concluded, like if you're up in that top quarter or top, 4 or 5 bidders that were actively bidding on there, like, be expecting a phone call from a number that you may not know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've probably had instances where bidders aren't on top of that and can't be reached as easily as they should be right after an auction, and maybe that costs them an opportunity.
Yeah, and it's probably the same for both bidders and landowners, right? That, like, as a landowner, hey, like, you're going to be getting calls from like these 4 numbers that we had given you, or the landowner is going to be, excuse me, calling all these folks and stuff that I know I've heard issues, but like if you are one of those, make sure you're answering your phone during that timeline. That, like, you don't want to be the guy that had to play the phone tag back and forth. I think it's just a bad look for that landowner. Your odds, in my mind, probably go down. You get that lease.
Absolutely. And when the auction ends and people have been involved in it for weeks, everyone's anxious to see what's going to happen. So we just want that to be as fast as possible and not leaving everyone hanging. People want to know if they got the ground. Landowners want to secure the lease and be done with it.
And typically you're going to ask the landowner to try to have a decision made within 48 hours.
Yep, that's absolutely what we shoot for. If we're able to have really good communication with the landowner throughout the auction, like, hopefully we know the person like right when it closes.
Right. Okay. That you're kind of filling them in as you go. Like, hey, here's the current high bidder is so and so. Here's a little background on him from what we can gather from his profile, or maybe Ezra's had extended conversations like she does with some of these guys kind of all along. And so, like, it's nice that we're able to have what you guys have in most cases had enough contact with both the landowners and the potential bidders in so many cases that, like, you probably even have a little bit of a feel like, hey, like, these folks communicate really well. They seem to really be on the ball. That they're just from that standpoint. I can't guarantee that they are the best farmer out of the mix, but they're very good at communicating. They seem like they are, very anxious or excited about this opportunity. So
yeah,
that's got to be beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll pass along to the landowner like any and all communication we've had with the bidders. There's certainly instances where I let a landowner know, be like, yeah, this guy's been like, really insistent. He's calling every day, and sometimes to the landowner, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, I'm glad I have an option here with someone who's really interested in the property.
No, that's great. That's great. And I guess going to the beginning of the process would be Ezra primarily, right? That
Mhm.
Ezra, she receives notifications all day long, it seems like, of whether it be someone interested in already wanting to put a property up for lease,
Mhm.
or through our cash rent submit system that, we get however many daily that come through that are in some cases just people who are truly curious, wanting to kind of learn more about their property, what the expectations would be on the ROI from that farm, be it a towable piece. But all of those emails come directly through our system. And then that gives Ezra the opportunity to reach out to those landowners, whoever ran that cash rent estimate, and basically help walk them through the process after that, right? Ezra, with it, how
Yeah.
does that typically go? You get an email notification, someone ran a new cash rent estimate,
Mhm.
interested, you follow up pretty much immediately, right?
Yeah, I try to give everyone a call that's run a cash rent submit within an hour to definitely within a day of them running it. They're always surprised that they're getting a phone call that quickly. But it's a good surprise, luckily. A lot of them are just trying to like mainly understand more about their land, which is what we're here for and what we like to do. And some of them don't even know that we do leasing on our website, and they're happy to hear it and happy to hear that, we gave them good information and they can trust that and continue working with the same company. They ran the estimate through us. They like the option to be able to list through us as well. So generally, I have, you know, one pretty long conversation with the landowner that's wanting to look at listing their land. It's almost never like a certain thing. They're always wary of different things. They've been with the same tenant for a while, or maybe they've been farming it themselves, or it hasn't been farmed in a few years.
Mm.
There are plenty of different situations. And we kind of talk through all that, talk through what the listing process looks like. And then we kind of go through, okay, this is what this listing would look like on our website. This is our lease agreement. High bid doesn't automatically win. We're going to find you someone that you can trust and go through all that. And then follow up a few days later with kind of figuring out all that information, all the specifics about the lease agreement and the actual listing.
Got it. And so, and obviously, I think it's beneficial for everybody to understand that our lease agreements are fairly boilerplate. That they
Mhm.
cover the vast majority of anything that folks would want on a tillable or a hunting lease agreement. Now, we do offer the opportunity, though, in these initial conversations, that the landowners, if there's any additional verbiage, or if they've got an attorney that they would like to review, maybe add some verbiage in there. That's not necessarily uncommon, and it's something that we're pretty proud to be able to offer. That we want to be able to protect not only the landowner but the tenant as well. That we our belief has always been that if everything's spelled out up front and everybody's on the same page, then it will help create a longer standing relationship with no guessing. Well, I thought you meant this, Ezra, when you said you were going to, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say, yes, our lease agreement, our standard one is boilerplate, but it is comprehensive
Mhm.
compared to tenants and landowners that are operating on a handshake agreement. Where there really aren't protections in place for either party.
And that's still not uncommon. It's always amazing to me that if you were to go rent a 600 square foot office space, you would have a stack of papers that big.
Yes.
Right.
The idea that people are still leasing their property, although they know these farmers, in so many cases they've had long-standing relationships with the land operator, and not in every case though, right? To where people are leasing especially in today's market, millions and millions of dollars worth of ground and asset value on a handshake. Just Silas, I assume you're going to pay me come November 1st, right?
Yeah.
Whoever the farmer is, you know what I'm saying? there's just no other business that does that, especially when we're talking assets of this high value that, much higher than a storefront or a office space or something like that. But we just want to make sure that, yeah, it's not just the farmers or it's not just the landowners, that everybody is protected here. And it's just
Yeah.
spelled out clearly what the expectations are. I think that's a huge value add of leasing through our platform.
Absolutely. I have both farmers and landowners comment on that, the security that the lease agreement gives them. At the end, both sides get to like fully agree on the lease agreement. There are sometimes small changes that are made once a bidder is chosen, just to make both parties feel as secure as possible. And it's definitely something people appreciate quite a lot.
No, it's great. And so and I'm sure like some of the conversations I've had with Ezra over time, it's like some of the funniest comments and funniest feedback of people that, again, we won't get to talk about all of them. Some foul language in some of these conversations that I know Silas dealt with it too. But like, what sort of, other than just the real outlandish, what, I guess for both of you, what would be like the common concerns or, questions that, what are the most common out of both farmers and landowners, I guess, of like once you have your initial conversation, I think there is still some skepticism. The way that we're operating or allowing folks to operate in this space, we're kind of changing the way that an entire industry has operated for like hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And so it is going to look maybe a little bit more complex than what it really is. But all we're doing is opening up the opportunity to every farmer in the area and make sure that landowner ultimately has some clarity on what the market's willing and able to bear at that point in time, instead of relying on the one individual like they always have. And I think we see it in, if you go to buy a new vehicle today, or if you go buy a home or something, like people shop around. You don't go with just the first option. Or if you get a plumber to come over to the house, or you need a new air conditioner or something, like you're probably going to get a couple prices, right? Like they're all high ticket items, and
it's a unique industry in how it's just kind of been behind in tools for price discovery and just transparency of what the market will bear. I'll let Ezra kind of go first on what the biggest landowner questions or concerns are.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it does have to do with that change from these hundreds of years of handshake agreements. So just like the trust in using a website to go through it, and not having just my neighbor is a farmer, I'm going to rent to him, whatever he wants to pay. It's just kind of that change that people are generally hesitant on. But once they kind of are able to walk through the process and see how easy and straightforward it is, that usually gets answered, usually gets, they usually feel better about it. They understand that, they can be as involved or uninvolved as they want to be as the landowner. Some landowners during a listing, I'm talking to them multiple times a week about how it's going, about the bidders. Some of them just want, hey, call me when the auction's over and we'll go over the list of bidders. Yep. So just that like change of, they've been generally really involved in renting out the ground, or it's been super easy. So just kind of figuring that out has been a big thing. But I mean, we're really lucky that we have a good team of people that are always available to answer those questions and, build that trust, because that's obviously the biggest thing, that this is still a person-to-person business. And it's not just the website that's doing it. We're really like hands-on the entire time. And that usually kind of clears that all up with the landowners.
Well, I think that's why, I was so excited to have you both on here, that like Ezra and Silas are real people, that, it's not some, random phone number from this website that is some sort of a hoax or something. Like we're real people. We really care about our clients or customers, and, that they're, We want to give, and we always have wanted to give the most white glove service as possible. And, it's taken us a long ways. I believe that, the personal one-on-one connections, discussions and stuff is just hugely beneficial to the whole of the transaction.
Yeah, you just need the white glove approach, and real people talking when it's a landowner's, a lot of times their biggest asset that they own.
Yeah.
So just doing something on the computer doesn't feel super comfortable. And because, it's a new thing in the industry, a big portion of those initial conversation is just education. What is a cash rent lease auction? A lot of people are just unfamiliar with it. In general, they don't know that this is a way that you can really discover what the market will bear, what market prices are for your ground in your county. And then we often confront, sort of like a disbelief from the landowner or like a sentiment of this is too good to be true. When we let a landowner know that, it's at no cost to them to put their land up and to receive all of these offers.
Yep.
So they're like, where's the catch? There isn't one, but we have to sort of overcome that and just fill that education piece. Yeah.
I mean, the way that it's structured, right? It's completely free to the landowner. So like all of your guys' time, all of our resources, from the very beginning of the process to the end, truly costs the landowner nothing. And, we did that in order to generate as much inventory and opportunities for farmers as we possibly could. And it is very clear on there once you start bidding, but it's 4% of the gross lease is paid by whomever the awarded tenant operating farmer is on an agricultural lease, and then we do currently 15% of the gross lease is a smaller some number substantially on the hunting leases, but same deal. It's for a landowner, it doesn't cost you anything to at least take the opportunity to see what the market's willing to bear. In most every case, we're looking at a 38 to 42% annual increase of landowner ROI, which again, on paper, like that's a staggering number that it's, if you guys told me that and I had never met you, I would say like, okay, come on. Like what,
Right.
how are you doing this? Why? But it's just straight up. It's just giving everybody an opportunity. And like, that's where the numbers end up falling almost every single time.
Yeah. And that's the average. Obviously, we have cases where we're dealing with leases that really have not been renegotiated in several years. They're handshake agreements that haven't kept up with commodity prices, over the last decade. We see all sorts of stuff, but those numbers can be even more staggering in those cases.
And it's just, the ability that you guys have to now educate, the education side is as important as anything in my mind. That, like both of you guys are originally from Iowa, so you grew up around corn and soybeans, all over the place. But even once you got into this business, which we're so thankful to have you both, but there's a learning curve there, right? That, I mean, you guys have both, it takes a lot of conversations. It takes a lot of hand-on experience, understanding soil maps, reading soil maps. What are the different soils that make up this CSR2 or this productivity index number, that they're not all the same. This soil is a better soil, although it has the same rating. And so there's a lot of depth to this that a lot of folks, landowners in particular, there's really no reason that they ever would have needed to be truly educated on this sort of stuff. And, to me, like the short conversations with you guys, being a landowner, or even like me talking with you guys on some stuff, I sure don't know every in and out of CommonGround, all of it, but
certainly
we've all learned a lot, right? That, we know enough to be dangerous to be able to really help educate these landowners, even if it is the kind of bare minimum of understanding what CommonGround is all about. And,
absolutely. And we're learning as we go, as we, pick up farms in different states where they're growing different crops, the learning curve continues. And we just, on the farmer side of things, we figure like, oh, we have this inventory. That's great. These guys are going to want to farm it. then we put out a listing, and we get all these questions from farmers that, maybe we weren't considering at first. Like, okay, like what's the access on this ground? How this guy's got machinery that's this big. He actually, how's he going to get into this field?
Yep.
So as we kind of learn what farmers are looking for, what details they're looking for, that's all stuff that we can get ahead of time from the landowner next listing and just lay that out very transparently on the listing.
Yep.
That's the whole goal, is just to be as transparent as possible.
I love it. And so, like, common farmer questions that you might hear more of, Si, like during the bidding process, what are like some concerns you see, or
Yeah.
farmers have, I guess.
So farmers, they're relying initially on our aerial maps.
Yep.
To get a view of the farm. These farmers might farm the ground next door, or they might, be 30 miles away, but they farm something 5 miles away from that farm. So they're kind of just want to go over details of the farm. They're going to want to go over access points. They're going to want to know if that aerial map, if there's been any improvements done to the farm, or if that it kind of is as it sits. Of course, as a farmer, they're going to wonder, hey, do we have any, historical yields on this farm? Is there any tile in there? What's the drainage like? Anything they can find out to kind of, do their own back end calculations and come up with an offer that's going to serve them and the landowner.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's like when you're talking about the historical yield data and field tile maps. Well, even if they're old, if it's old clay tile in a field that it's maybe not recently tiled, but it's all such valuable stuff to have as a landowner, especially the yield, or if I would like to see inputs and soil tests semi-annually, stuff along those lines. And I say this not just from like today it being valuable because you're going to go look for a new tenant or just see what the market's willing to bear currently. But if the time or day ever comes that you or your family or their family decide that it's time to sell the farm, well, having this sort of data, the yield data, the soil composition and the soil tests, all that sort of, that goes so far in making sure that you maximize on the value of that farm at the time of the sale. And so the stuff, as much data you can pick up, all I'm encouraging the landlord, as much data as you can pick up annually, keep it in a folder, keep it on your computer for everyone. We can help with all that sort of stuff. It is invaluable when it comes to a sale.
I'm glad you're stressing that. That's something we come across pretty often when we're working with a landowner, let's say, who just inherited some ground from their parents. And we'll ask, when we're putting up a listing for them, like, hey, do you have any records, any soil tests, historical yields, any inputs? Oftentimes they have nothing. We're still able to help them out, getting at least, but something that we put into our default contracts going forward when we help them is we're going to, put it in the contract that the input information is going to be shared with the landowner. The yields are going to be shared with the landowner. It makes sense that we define that in the contract, and that at the end of the lease agreement, if they don't decide to continue with that tenant, they're going to have all that information as they should, as the owner of that asset.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
on the flip side of that, I've worked with quite a few landowners. Let's say there's this couple that they're in their 90s and they've had this farm forever. They've had the same farmer forever, but they know that they're going to pass this on to their kids. So they wanted to list with us, get that increased cash rent and, get it up to current land value rather than what it was in 2002 when they started leasing it out to this guy. And then they have, they rent it out. They have this few years of data that, we had in our lease agreement and had them collect, and that increased cash rental value, which then when they passed on to their kids have a much better sale value, if that's the way they want to look at it, or a much more accurate cash rental value going forward.
And I think that by getting these cash rents up, when we're seeing that 40% kind of as like a flatline increase, well, if it's ground that's going to be handed down to children, grandchildren, any of the above, like maybe the maybe the family would prefer that it doesn't get sold, right? Well, like, and it's very tempting for a couple siblings to inherit, 200 acres of farm ground, knowing that that 200 acres of farm ground in many cases might be worth $15,000 an acre or something like that. And they're looking at the total sum and saying, well, at the current $250 an acre, we're going to have to live 12 lifetimes to get what we could just get right now. It's like,
Yeah.
let give us, I think that's where we can help. And we get that farm with that, if that's like a soil farm, we'll get that rent up to where it should be maybe $400 an acre. Well, now you're looking at like $80,000 a year. You still own the ground. You still continue to reap the rewards of that ground appreciating year after year. Maybe you and your sister like just keep the farm ground, collect your 40,000, and then you still have that asset to pass down to your children or something down the line. You don't get you don't get quite as beat up with the tax consequences of, there was a basis in there. And a lot of this depends on how, like, it's structured of stuff of ground getting passed along. But if people don't do it right, there could be a cost basis in there of, say, $1,000 an acre when great grandpa purchased it. Well, those taxes are getting based off of that as the original. Now we're selling for 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And you're giving a lot of money away that you maybe didn't need to,
Maybe.
And so I just see that the value of increasing the rent well beyond just the short-term benefits is like as valuable as anything out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think educating landowners on that goes a long ways in itself. Let's maybe don't make it quite as tempting for the kids to sell the ground. Like, let's hold on to it for a while.
And I see us, becoming more and more a resource for those situations where kids are inheriting the ground, and just, these kids might live in another city or another state completely. And so the really easy route, without being connected or in that community, the really easy route is, okay, let's sell it. But when they have a resource where, they can put it up and, see what the actual market rates are, oh, maybe this is something that we can continue to hold on to.
And we've seen, and like, we're starting to work more deeply rooted in with some of these farm management companies, be it a Summit Ag out of Iowa. There's countless, kind of throughout the Midwest, that, if you work directly through us to get your rent, and I only say that because it's the most efficient way for us to get it out to every farmer in that area, instead of, even a farm manager going and trying to track down, the 7 or 9 bidders, however many we see typically on every auction.
Mhm.
Well, it's just a much streamlined process to let all these farmers come to us. We review them. But in that case, like, we are very adamant that there's huge value in the farm management process for landowners, especially who are disconnected, like well beyond just us helping connect them with the right farmer in the area, that, if you would
Absolutely.
like to have the most solid documentation of the yield history of the soil, of these farm managers, that's really what they do, and I'm adamant that it's a huge value add, especially if you're removed from the farm, to pay these farm managers are going to pay for themselves without a doubt. And so we make the connection, and they can even help counsel these landowners, if they're, if you take say Summit Ag or something, and we're leasing a property there in central Iowa, well, those guys are going to know the farmers in the region, right? And so if we say, hey, guys, we would encourage you, landowner, to speak with a Joel or a Justin over there, whomever at Summit. And I'm using them just because we're regionally kind of talking about central Iowa, but like, let them help make the decision off of that farmer as well. And you go beyond the, even utilizing our seller, detail pages and all of the sort of information we can get back. Those guys are going to be really boots on the ground. and you'll be able to say, hey, here's the top 4 bidders. And those guys, they're going to know most of those folks and, have a better background. But then you start that working relationship off of, the connection that we were able to create through CommonGround. And then you let those guys run with the heavy lifting on the back end of making sure that everything's taken care of on the farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we kind of find bidders, if it makes sense, they're for a farm manager, we'll be a resource and we'll refer them to who we know in the area that does a really good job. And it just comes back to land just possibly being their most valuable, if not one of their most valuable assets. So having a professional in there that's kind of managing it, like you said, it's going to pay for themselves.
100%. Yep. 100%. Do you guys have any suggestions or thoughts? I guess if you're a landowner out there looking right now, obviously this commodity market is still somewhat on a very bearish sort of trend. Not sure where that's going to go. It seems like extreme rains again over the weekend in northwestern Iowa, in the Dakotas. And then here where I'm at in central Illinois, we did get a little bit of rain on Saturday night, but it's still very, very dry. We're very behind. And so I think the uncertainty there in the commodities market, if the state of Iowa and the state of Illinois, number 1 in corn production in Iowa, and number 1 in soybean production in Illinois, these weather patterns are not treating everybody very fairly at the moment. And so it's going to be interesting on that aspect. But I think going into the 2025 season, there might be some hesitancy from existing farmers to continue to pay what they have been paying, depending on when that lease started. And so, if landowners, I would encourage landowners, if you do have the conversation with your current tenant about how things are going to look for the 2025 farm season, I would be a little bit slow in just saying, okay, yeah, I understand commodities are down this year. Let's drop the price 10%, because nobody's really able to know what 2025 crops are going to look like. And so I think that's a great opportunity to, instead of, maybe getting sideways with your current farmer because he's going to want a reduction, tell him, hey, listen, I feel like I need to just put it out there, see what the market's willing to bear, on a 3-year lease or a 2-year lease or kind of whatever everybody's comfortable with. But that farmer still is good at, I would say, actually better opportunity to get that lease with his longstanding relationship with that landowner, right?
Yeah.
So, the same farmer can still farm it. And we would just always, in every case, strongly encourage them to make sure they get their highest and best bid in. But I think they've got the best opportunity to remain on that farm just because of that longstanding relationship. But it'd be nice to know that you've got 3 other farmers in your area that are willing to pay, say, for example, $75 to $100 more per acre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're talking 100 to 100 acre tract. It's a lot of money, and for the same exact product that you as the landowner are offering to the farmer. And, as taxes keep going up, the cost of owning ground keeps going up. Let's just make sure that everybody's getting a fair kick. I guess that's all.
Yeah. I mean, we're having a lot of these conversations right now. Everyone's watching the commodity markets. No one knows where things are going to land, come harvest. But I don't know, what we say to landowners is, first of all, if you have a lease, terminating, coming to an end with your tenant, or if it's year by year, take the opportunity to put it out there and see what the market will bear. Because as a landowner, you only have so many opportunities to do that, right? Before you're locked in, then maybe commodity prices jack back up and you're going to miss out on, what you should have had for income during that time.
Absolutely.
So
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Thanks.
No, I was just going to say, the other aspect of that, there will be substantial push from CommonGround, just on an education standpoint, is that even on a handshake deal, say you live in Iowa or your farms are in Iowa, you've had the same farm around there for 7 years, not much has changed. You are watching this podcast with Silas and Ezrah, and it's October, and you say, "Hey, I would really love to do this. I think my farm would be a great opportunity." And you call Ezra, and it's October 10th or something, and you say, "Hey, I would like to do this." But unfortunately, Ezra's response is going to be, "Did you send out a termination letter prior to September 1st for the state of Iowa?" And they are 100% of the time going to say, "No, we didn't. What are you talking about?" And so I just want to make sure that people understand. And like I said, we're going to do a really, really thorough job this year of making sure that people are educated and understand that. But even on a handshake, if there's no contract, if there's no nothing for Iowa, if you don't give written notification prior to September 1st, which would be like right now, it's wild how the months are flying by. It's almost July. You've got basically 2 months to make sure that you get that out there. Now, that doesn't mean that farmer doesn't still get to farm that piece. All that means, though, is that you have the legal right now to have at least a negotiation with that farmer, that maybe you want terms to change, maybe you want something different. I would encourage that you get a written lease in place. But the way that the laws are set up is very much structured to protect the farmer, which is 100% understandable. They're the ones kind of with their asses out there all the time, and they put all the fertilizer and everything in. And so I completely get it. It makes sense to me why they're protected in that fashion. Yeah. But landowners, in order to even negotiate a deal that you had like last year, say corn goes up to $7, and it's not going to, but if it did, and you said, "Hey, it's October," and you say, "Farmer Silas, hey, I'd seen corn's really going up. I'd like to, you think we could get another $25 an acre off there?" And Farmer Silas could very easily say, "Maybe next year," but we didn't talk about it prior to September 1. We just stick with the same deal, and there's just no reason to get trapped in that.
Yeah, I'd say that this lease termination dates and procedures are probably one of the least understood aspects of owning agricultural land. And we have, if you don't take the opportunity and terminate the lease, you're losing the opportunity to even negotiate. You don't even have that. You could fully plan on sticking with your same farmer, but you lose the opportunity to negotiate at all. Ezra and I both have horror stories from landowners who have been really intense. Maybe they had real issues with their farmer. Things weren't being done properly. There wasn't honesty and good communication. Fully intent on terminating a deal and just miss the deadline. And they're just out of luck.
Farm the next year, then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. It's like, it's very important to educate these people on this stuff.
Right. And it really is about 20% of landowners that I talk to that are even aware that they have to send a termination letter, let alone know the deadline. And I think that's the biggest thing that I, personally try to help with and help landowners understand, is that like knowledge is power. Like they don't know about these termination deadlines. They don't know that they could have the opportunity to negotiate or look at other options. If they send that letter out, when they list their land, they're seeing what the market value actually is when they let farmers bid on it. Farmers, in their area rather than just their neighbor. Yep. Knowledge is power, and that's kind of what we're trying to give these landowners.
I love it. Yeah. And there'll be a lot of documentation, even through some of the CommonGround channels, that people will be able to go to as resources, and you can look up your state. If you're in the state of Michigan, here's the termination deadline. If you're in Illinois, it's October 31. They're all a little bit different. The procedures, from my understanding, are pretty much consistent throughout. It's just the dates are different.
Right.
Yeah. And you might have to dig a little bit. You might have to go into your state's, law, their code for farm lease terminations. But if an easier route, if you call Ezra or I, we can can provide that for you. Some have specific templates you sort of need to use and how you terminate, and we can provide that to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help with that.
No, thank you. And I think it's a great resource. And I know you guys have like PDF sort of stuff on this that whoever wants to introduce themselves to Silas or Ezra, be it email, that will, those contacts will be all on the podcast at the end here. Emails, phone numbers, just reach out and they can fire you off, hey, here's a PDF of, state by state deadlines. Here's kind of the requirements, so on and so forth. But very, very valuable to have, just like you said, Ezra, like the knowledge is the power, and you just have to just make sure that your ducks are in a row.
Yeah. And just to emphasize this a little more, I could give like an example where we had one time where we had a landowner who was fully intent on leasing out their ground. They came to us. We were able to put their ground out, get offers for it. We ended up getting offers, $175 per acre over what they were getting
Per acre.
per acre.
Very good.
They were so excited, just ecstatic about this. Just kind of learned how much money they'd been leaving on the table. I think their father had owned the ground before. Then we found out when it was, time to accept one of those offers that they did not properly terminate with that tenant, and they needed to continue with that farmer for this next year. So in that case, they got hit in the face, knowing, oh, we left, an additional tens of thousands of dollars, on the table just for this year for failing to terminate properly.
And that's a real story. Like that's
a real story.
It's going to happen again, and that's why we want to educate people on this so well that it wasn't that way. That family went from like 175 to 350, right? It was like their increase almost went up.
Something in that range.
I think it was even closer to 400. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was on a substantial amount of acres, though. We're talking like $25,000-$30,000 that should have just fell out of the sky for these folks in a very happy, excited new tenant operator willing and able to pay that. And the train just stopped, right? When the farmer who didn't have a written agreement or anything didn't get his termination letter and just said, no, guys, I'm still farming this for 50% rate. Now you're probably never going to have me farm after this year, but I'm going to get it for another one.
He's probably ready to retire after this year. So. But we've kept, we keep in communication with those folks, and they'll get another chance to, get fair rent for their.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate Ezra, Silas, all your time, everything you do for our company day in, day out. And so I just cannot thank you all enough. Appreciate everyone listening. It's good to be able to put a face to Silas, Ezra. They're kind of the first point of contact and the last point of contact in any transaction for landowners, farmers, hunters, you name it. We've got a wonderful additional team to these guys, but they are really like the anchor of the face-to-face everything with customers through CommonGround. So we're very thankful for them. Thank everybody for listening. Hopefully some of this was educational, and I assume that you guys will be getting phone calls about termination letters here at some point.
I hope
Sounds
so.
good. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having us, and we'll leave contact information below wherever this is posted.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you all.
Free